All right, so for this recording for the live code session, we're going to be kind of setting up kind of a new class. We're going to design it. We're going to do this all from scratch. So let's just kind of make a list of stuff that we want. I was thinking that we can kind of do something that's very similar to what we did previously, where we are creating like a stamp type action. So we want to be able to create a new object wherever I click. Okay. And for this one, we want to add a little bit of additional functionality. So we want to build a class structure. And we want to do this like with, say, the Among Us characters. So I was thinking that we can have like a few of the Among Us characters as PNGs that will randomly get picked when we create the object. So let's kind of think then in terms of the object. The object, this Among Us character, we're going to need a mouse, like an X, a Y, and the image. The object's going to need, let's see, it's going to need to have a couple more things. Now, what I wanted to do when we create this object, instead of it just placing it, previously we've just used the display where we're just showing something, but now I want it to actually update. So I want, when I click somewhere, that it is putting that object in that location, but that I can actually change it. So we'll have it rotate either right or left. So we're going to need to have that additional requirements. When we create, we're going to need to have a rotation, direction, a rotation angle that's going to have to hold some value. I'm going to have some type of size. Now I could have that randomly created when I create the object. I don't necessarily need to pass that in. We are going to have some type of display that will display object. Display object with object's size, position, and rotation. Okay, and then we are going to end up have to do some type of update for the object that will update the rotation angle with the rotation direction. Okay, so a bunch of this stuff, things that we are going to need. We're going to need to use the random. We'll need to use random function, and I'm going to talk about that because we could use that for arrays. We're going to have to build. We'll have to build an array for images, and we'll have to build an array for the objects. We will need to loop through the array, through the objects in that array to be able to draw them. To call the display of each object in the draw. We will, the creation of them, since that's where we're clicking on our mouse, that's going to be event-based. So we will need an event, like mouse pressed. That's probably a good one, to create the object. And push to the array. So this is similar to stuff that we've done before. So I have a whole list of things. Okay, so let's just start knocking them out. We know that we are going to have an array of images. So whenever I'm using an array, I'm just going to finish it with S. Images is square brackets, and let's do one for the Among Us. Among Us is a set of brackets. Okay, we know we're doing images, which means we need to put a preload, and we're going to have to load the images, and we're going to have to push them onto the array right here. We know we're going to need to have a Among Us.js class. So I need to set this up down here. So I'm in my index and I need to add this file. So I need to have my sketch first in this case. Let's make sure we're selecting the whole line. And then I change this to the correct name, Among Us. Okay, so that should make things a little easier. Now I need to find the images. So I'm just going to quickly do a search, Among Us.png. This will make things a little bit easier. PNG helps us look for transparency. So really we just need some of these. And when I'm displaying them, there's a couple ways that I'm going to show based on if they are actually transparent or not. So let's just open up a couple of these. Okay, so this looks like it's transparent. This looks like it's transparent. I see a checkerboard that may or may not be transparent though. So, and that one has a shadow. Let's see if we can find a different one. Yeah, let's do this one. Okay, so I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to Save Image As. If it's identifying as a PNG, that's good. If it's trying to do it any other file as like a WebP, then we might have to do it a little bit different. So I'll walk through kind of that. So let's just say Among Us P. Okay, so there we got it. So let's pretend that this one is not working right. I could, go to Save Image As, download it. That's doing as a PNG. But let's say it's not working. Well, I could copy this image and then I can open up any editor. So photopea.com would work. Open it up, paste it in here. There we go. Now, if we wanted to double check to see if this was transparent, which we're going to have to check each one of them anyways. All we got to do is we got to add a layer underneath our picture and then just draw any shape. So I have, red, but we can see that I'm only seeing the character on here. It is a true transparent image. Now, a couple of the things that I could do while I have it in here, I can actually shrink down this size right here so that I can be very specific on the size of the object so I don't have all that extra transparency messing up my size. So delete the crop pixels, and then I need to hit the check mark. So now that's my new size. It's still transparent. Looks pretty good. All right, so then this, I'm actually exporting this. So export as PNG, and here I'm going to change the name. So Among Us G.png, and we're going to save it there. Okay, so now I could also do this pink one. Let's go ahead and see. See, that one actually is not a transparent layer because otherwise I would not be seeing this background. So that means that I do end up having to edit this one. So even though we had it, let's undo. Okay. So this P, let's resize. Nice and fat. All right, we need to cut out the rest of this, the transparency. So one of the ways that I might do it, I might do a selection on this object, and it's highlighting everything. Okay, and then I can go to select and I can inverse it, and then I can delete. But we need to rasterize. Okay, so now I can, oops, let's select. We want to make sure that we're selecting everything. So oh, that worked. Okay, I could just check the, now let's check it with the background. I'm okay with that. It's transparent, so now we can export this. We're going to have to save it over the other one because the other one wasn't transparent. So I'm going to give it the exact same name, Among Us P.png. We're saving over this one. Yep, we know it. We click OK. All right, so then we have our green. Let's do our red. Again, we could try to download, or we can copy it and paste it into Photopea. Let's go ahead and just copy the image. We'll practice that step again. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's check transparency. That looks good. Okay, I can export this one. Now when I'm exporting, notice that I don't have all of these selected, and I only have the one that I want to see. If I export with the green background, it's going to show that green background. So I just want my image and my layer selected, export as PNG. This would be Among Us R.png. All right, so now I have my 3 images. I need to come in here. I'm going to upload those files. So this one, oops, Amongst R, P, G. Okay. I see them here, so they're good. All right, so now in the preload, we want to preload this. Now I can, I'm really doing this. So I'm taking the images.push, and inside of it, I'm loading the image, just like what I would in the reference. So if I open up here and I do load image, let's look at that one. This right here. Instead of me storing this as a variable, I'm pushing this directly on the array, so it's taking up one of those spots. So I'm basically doing this directly in there. So I'm just saying load image, and then I want to load the Among Us G.png. Okay, so that is one line. I'm going to have to do that 3 times. So there's 2, 3, and then we got R and P. This only works if the names match exactly, which they don't. Look, I have uppercase instead of lowercase. A, and A. Okay, now I should be able to run, and I should have no errors show up. We're good. It doesn't do anything yet, but I have these images. All right. Now, we know that we want to create this Among Us. Let's go ahead and build this. So we're going to say class among us. And inside of here, we know we're going to have a constructor with some requirements. We're going to have a display, and we're going to have an update. All right, so let's build. We said we required, based on here, we required an X, a Y, and an image, and then we had additional rotation stuff to use. Okay, so we want an X, a Y, an image, and then we could build from there. So this dot X is X, this dot Y is Y, this dot image is image, this dot rotation angle is, we're setting it to 0, this dot rotation direction, and now we got to do something a little bit different. So let's look at the references, and I'm going to pull up the random so we can see it. Okay, random we have used before because it goes from one number to another number. If I only put one number, that's where it caps out at. So I'm picking any random number up to but not including 50, or I can pick any number from -50 up to but not including 50. But I can also use this in terms of me passing in an array. So this is what an array would look like if I stored that as a variable and then I'm pulling out, then I am returning a random item from that array. So we can actually use this as a couple, we could modify some type of array so that could be the different options that we have for when we create something. So I'm going to build an array that I don't really need for anything other than I just want it to give the different directions. So my rotation directions, I'm going to build with a random, and then I'm making an array, and I'm going to put it directly in there. Now, my option is I want it to either be turning to the left or to the right. And it's going to just randomly pick from there. We need to do our size. Our size we're going to be using for our width and height. Let's do a random size, and let's do it from, let's say, 30 up to 100. Okay, that should be everything. Let's double check. We got rotation, direction, angle, size. We need to display, and we need to update. Okay, so in here, our display, because we're using images and stuff, it would be best if we use push pop. So let's just build those so we're not affecting anything else. Okay. Now inside this push pop, I know every time I'm drawing this object, I personally want to do degree mode. So then I need to set that mode. So angle mode, degrees. Image mode, we know we want to do center instead of from the top left. Then because we're doing rotation, that means that we need to have the origin. If we want our shape to actually rotate around itself, we need to have the origin of the shape be the very center of the shape. So I need to translate, but where am I translating? I'm translating to my X and Y of my object. So this dot X, this dot Y. Then I can rotate, and I can rotate by this dot rotation angle. Remember, you got to write everything with this dot. And then I can draw that. So image, and I'm using this dot image, and I'm drawing it at that origin. So it's going to be 0 away from the origin and 0 up from the origin. Now I need to give it a size. Well, let's do this dot size for the width, this dot size for the height. That should be good. That is my display. And then when we update, we know that we're going to have to update the rotation angle based off of the rotation direction. So if we're rotating to the left, that's that -1. I want to add that -1 to the rotation angle, so it's going to make it get smaller, so it should make it turn to the left. And then if I add that positive number, it's going to be adding, I'll make it larger, I'll make it rotate to the right. So I'm going to say this dot rotation angle plus equals this dot rotation direction. Okay, that should give it to me. Now let's go back to our sketch. We have, we built our class structure, we got this, we got this, we got this, we got this, we've got that. We have it, but we haven't actually started doing that and pushing anything on the array. We have not set up our mouse press or our loop. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we know, let's do our mouse press function, mouse pressed. All right, so I'm going to just create, let's say, a temp object. That would be fine. And we know it's going to be a new among us that has an X, a Y, and an image. Okay, so I am picking mouse X as my X, mouse Y as my Y, and then I need some random image. So I'm going to go random and then pull the images, and it's going to do a random one of those images. Like just what we've seen with the random, a random one out of that array. It's going to return it. That's what's going to get put here. Okay, and then what I need to do is I need to take that temporary object and I need to push it onto the among us array. So among us dot push what? The temp object. Okay, so now that I've pushed it on there, I basically just need to be able to display. So if I wanted to see if I'm properly doing this, console.log, let's just call the length and make sure that that's working. So I should be able to see every time I click. Okay, so we know that that's working. So now that we know that we have it, then inside of our draw, oops, I think I took off a bracket. Inside of our draw, we need to loop through that array and then call the update and call the display of each among us object. Okay, so we're going to do a for loop. So let index equal to 0, and index will continue up all the way to the among us dot length. And we want to do it by 1, so index incrementer, and then inside here create, say that temp object. That temp object is going to be the among us at that index value, so that will give us each one of them. So once we've pulled one of them and stored it as a temporary variable, then we can use that temporary variable to update and to display. All right. And then each time that this will do it, so it will call this on each one, come back up to the top, call the next one, call the next one. It's going to do all of that every single frame, so we should see all of them. Now, we're in space. I would like this to be closer to black. All right, now let's check. Ooh, we got an error somewhere. Let's check. Index is not defined. Index right there. Hey, there we go. And it's doing different sizes, and we're creating different ones, and they're updating. That's pretty cool. Now, there is something that I notice. I see them actually rotating backwards. Let's do it again. He's rotating backwards, but if I know what that rotation angle is, I could probably switch that. The other thing is we could maybe have it random where some of them are not rotating at all. So how could we do that? Well, we just got to look at our constructor. Our rotation direction is -1 or 1, so that's what we're adding to it. What if we added a 0 to it? That gives us a different option. There, we got one stationary, another stationary. We can maybe change these values. Maybe I want -2. I want to have some that are rotating faster and some that are rotating, let's say, really fast. See, we got that faster one right there. And then that one's really fast. And that's all just because those are the random directions that we're picking. So we can modify this, and that's pretty cool. Let's see. We could also play around with how we display. If we know that they're rotating backwards, then I could choose to use the scale. So since I'm scaling from the origin, it makes it a lot more easy to flip the image. Basically, instead of us loading a different image, I want to flip this image along the x-axis. Okay, so we want to, now the order is going to matter. I can't do this before the rotate or it's not going to work. But I could build a simple conditional, and I found that just by playing around with it. You could play around with it and you'll see that it works only some of the case. Move it around in the order. Like we know that translate has to be before rotate, so we can control where it's rotating from. So we can play around with that. So I want to check if this dot rotation direction, if that is, let's say, less than 0, then what do I want? Well, I want to scale. My normal one defaults to scale as 1, 1. But I want to scale as -1. That means I want to flip it on the x-axis only for when it is spinning to the left. That would make it so that it's flipping around. So let's check. Ooh, I got some error somewhere, I think. Not all of them are drawing in. Okay, the issue, I introduced an issue. We noticed that it's all the ones that are turning left. What is it? Well, it's because I didn't default it to 1. I put it 0. Silly me. There we go. And all the ones that are turning to the left are facing the direction that they're moving. All right, that's it for this little walkthrough. All we did was we kind of sat down, decided how we were going to design a class, what we wanted it to do. We built it. We used loops and arrays to make it easier for us to be able to create something cool. We added a little bit of randomization, but we're also picking specific locations using the mouse pressed event. That's it. That's all I got. Good luck. Have fun.